Hey, what's going on? It's the Petrol List.
Hey, what's going on? It's your boy Dalton from the Petrol List. Happy Monday to ya. Hope you had a great weekend. It's great to see ya. Let's talk about some Formula One. I think specifically this week we're going to be talking about Mercedes. And I am going to try to get into some Red Bull and some Ferrari and some McLaren, maybe some Aston Martin news over the next couple of weeks because, there's not a whole lot going on. You have to go based on inferences and whatnot. But we're doing Mercedes today. 51 days until the race season begins. So everything that's coming out of the different team camps, it's going to be kind of cryptic. Yeah, you'll get a little bit of technical information, but nothing super specific. We already know the side pods are coming back. The gearbox is going to be smaller and lighter in the upcoming W15. That begs the question for me, if they could have made it smaller and lighter this whole time, why didn't they? Why wouldn't you? I think that's the whole point of this kind of engineering, is making things smaller and lighter and better performance and whatnot. So are they going to be introducing any gearbox weaknesses? They're smart guys and gals over Mercedes, so I'm sure they've got that sorted out. But that's something to look out for in 2024. Are they going to have any gearbox issues? Did they have to overcorrect? I don't know. We'll see. Something significant is that Lewis Hamilton requested that the cockpit position in the upcoming W15 be moved further back. I don't know the technical implications. I can only guess that maybe it has to do with weight distribution. Maybe it has to do with peripheral vision, because the further back you are, the more you can see the front of your car, the more you can see if you're going to collide with folks. That could be something. But the most significant part of that is that Lewis Hamilton requested that change. Mercedes granted it. Anytime a driver requests a change to a concept that is essentially unchangeable once the season starts and the team accepts it, that means that the team is pretty much banking on that driver for the champion, aka principal driver. Now, Lewis Hamilton, seven-time world champion. He's been the principal driver for Mercedes since the Napoleonic era. Of course, he's the lead driver. Well, I don't think it's been that straightforward. Remember, he didn't beat his teammate in 2022. Now, a lot of folks said that was due to Hamilton using his car as the test bed. I think George Russell said something about that not being true. I don't know. It could be true, could be not true. But what I do know is that Hamilton had a much better 2023 season. And Mercedes has seen that. I think he's back in form, and he's going to be pushing forward. Now, the one person on the team that I don't think necessarily got that message is George Russell. We're going to read some of his quotes from last year and from the end of last year. Discussing the on-track collisions in 2023, Russell told Autosport, "I think it's normal when you're so close in performance, and when you're lapping at the same lap times or you're starting next to one another on the grid, you're always going to be close. Well, if it wasn't Lewis there, you'd be starting next to somebody else who has a similar pace as you. So it doesn't really justify collisions just because you're next to someone." I know that makes it more difficult, but we're talking about a sport of milliseconds. I don't think that's a very relevant thing. There may be tense moments, it may be hard, but we trust one another. We know that we'll give each other enough space to fight necessarily and not go beyond the limit. Obviously, Qatar was just a bit of a lap one small misjudgment. That's another opportunity, or it was another podium, or even a potential victory missed. We always go through our strategies in meetings. The pace difference between the two of us is 0. That's a very definitive statement, by the way. Is 0. We're always going to be across a 24 race season, an average of 60 laps per race. We cross paths a lot, and he's the driver I cross paths with the most. So I think that's probably what we put it down to. I think also we trust one another. Now, he can't be the person you cross paths with the most. and be P3 in the Drivers' Championship and P8. Just based on statistics and technically speaking, if he's in P3 and you're P8, you've been closer to other drivers in the P7, P9 area. And I know points kind of take some of that away. But you're going to be closer to some other drivers than you were to Lewis Hamilton this season, so you can't really use that as an excuse. And like I said, it's a sport of milliseconds. Something else that stems from that conversation right there is that I personally don't see Lewis Hamilton as an appropriate quote-unquote rival for George Russell. I see Fernando Alonso. I see Max Verstappen. I see Seb when he was on the grid as an appropriate rival for Lewis Hamilton. I think George Russell has some work to do before he can consider himself a rival to the top drivers, to championship drivers. I think that he might be more in the class of Leclerc. He might be more in the class of Norris and Piastri. And Piastri, I think, is a phenomenal driver. But I don't know if he's quite there to be calling himself a rival of Lewis Hamilton, because that also makes him a rival of Fernando Alonso and a rival of Max Verstappen. I don't think he's quite in that class yet. I think he can get there. Will he get there before Hamilton retires? I don't know. But I just don't think he's there. And I think the sooner he can, realize that and battle at the appropriate place, he's going to benefit Mercedes and himself. Now, if I was George Russell, I would be thinking to myself, the fastest way I can get myself into a secure lead driver's position is to help Lewis Hamilton win an 8th championship. Get this guy out of here. Get this guy out of the driver's seat so I can take over. And then, oh, by the way, I will inherit all of his fans because I helped him out. I know that's a little bit more of a self-serving thing, more of a self-serving strategy. But if you're looking for longevity in the sport, you're looking for a good fan base in the sport, that's how I would look at it. And if I found an opportunity to beat him in a race or two, yeah, of course I would do that. You got to up your stock. You can't just sit back and wait around if you think that you can get that victory. But I think for the most part, I would be trying to get him that 8th and get him out of here, because Lewis Hamilton is still young and healthy. He could race for another 5 years, and the longer he's denied the 8th championship, not that he has a birthright to it, obviously, but the longer he's denied that by his own teammate, the longer he's going to stay there to fight. If I'm George Russell, I don't want that. Now, let's talk about one of his, I think it's one of his more recent quotes. He said, "I've been on Lewis's level on average throughout this year, and I'm not satisfied with just being on his level. I want to be ahead of him, but I also have got to be realistic. I'm going up against the greatest driver of all time." I think chronologically speaking, this was a bit of a later quote, and I think it's reflected in that last sentence of him saying, "I've got to be realistic." That's the first little bit of humility that I've heard. And the other thing I will talk about is the fact that he said when Lewis and Toto were acquainted, Lewis was already a world champion, this megastar. So that was Russell kind of, complaining that Toto Wolff had more respect for Lewis Hamilton because when they met, he was already a champion. Well, duh, of course, he was already a world champion. That's a lot. That's a lot. And that's to expect it. I think, you just have to be realistic. If somebody's already a world champion and a team principal comes on, yeah, there's going to be more respect than if you just came from Formula 2. It's just what it is, man. You just got to let it sink in, play a role, and I think that eventually you are going to get a championship, George Russell, if you play your cards right and if Mercedes keeps building good cars. So Toto Wolff did say, talking about George Russell, "We will have a good conversation. he went on to say, everyone needs some feedback. He's a very strong character, and he came out of the summer very strong. He changed his approach a little bit, and that was good. And then it swung the other way around, and Lewis performed extraordinarily well. Mercedes is very subtle when it comes to letting out into the public what they're thinking, especially when it comes to relations. And I think the battle of the silver arrows, Hamilton versus Rosenberg, I don't think anybody wants a repeat of that. I don't think Toto Wolff wants a repeat of that. I think he wants to maintain Hamilton. I think how significant would it be to be the team principal of a driver when he gets the 8th championship? That looks good on your resume. That looks good on your little trophy wall. So I think Hamilton wants an 8th. I think Wolff wants an 8th for Hamilton. The whole team obviously wants a championship. And I think at this point, Russell might be the odd man out in terms of sharing a goal. And I think that could be problematic. And I think it would behoove him to play the team game, maybe for the next year, maybe the next 2 years. Because if he's 25 right now, he's got at least another decade and a half of driving if he really wants it, if he really wants to stay in shape. That's plenty of time to win championships. I think, maybe just kind of go in order. Win where you can. Win where it's clear. But play the team game. Inherit Hamilton's fans, because at this point, if there were a lot of collisions in 2024 or, denying Hamilton of wins, I'm not sure I would come back and be a Mercedes fan. There's other drivers who are great. I might be a Ferrari fan. I might be a McLaren fan. And I say that not because I am the one who's most important, but I think that there are a whole lot of people, a whole lot of fans who would kind of see that and just have that feeling of meh if Mercedes couldn't figure out who the principal driver was. You'd just be like, come on, clown show. And if Russell essentially, drives poorly, but then also takes Mercedes down with him in terms of points, I don't think that a whole lot of people will be coming back for that either, unless you are already out of the box a Russell fan. So I think my prediction is that, will there be some close calls in 24? Absolutely. I hope that they'll be minimalized. And I hope that it will be a great season for Mercedes. Because if it's not a great season for Mercedes, because of the client technical relationship, it's going to be a poor season for Aston Martin, McLaren, Williams. So Mercedes has a lot riding on it, and also Formula One has a lot riding on Mercedes. It's up to Mercedes' decisions that dictate how entertaining and how successful of a business the 2024 Formula One season will be. There's a lot riding on Mercedes. It's not just them. So I'm excited. We'll see what happens in February, and I will see you next week. I'm out.